I joined an organization that I thought was amazing. It had the purpose, the passion, and the profit all woven together. And I thought it'd be a place that I'd probably retire, quite frankly. And about a year and a half into that job, I was asked to leave.
Welcome to this week's As Unexpected podcast, when we talk to C-suite executives, entrepreneurs, and philanthropists about how they lead into the future when the future generally goes as unexpected. I'm Scott Marshall, your host, and my own professional experience has made me a believer that it's not how you show up when all goes as planned, but it is how you show up when things go as unplanned. Given all of their experiences, each of our guests has become very attuned to the fact that the future is not to be predicted. My hope is that this podcast can help all of you become better leaders by building the core leadership capabilities for leading in an uncertain world. Hello, listeners, and welcome to another episode of the As Unexpected podcast. I am really thrilled to have Josh Craver here with us today. Josh, thank you for joining me, and you and I had a chance to talk before and prep for this, and I'm just super excited for what you can share with our audience. Can you start off, please, by giving our listeners a bit of background on yourself and what you're up to now?
Sure. Thank you for the opportunity to be on the podcast. Really excited to be here and talk with you and the audience. So my background, 20 plus years of corporate experience. I've had the opportunity to work in management consulting, financial services, fintech, edtech. 3 of the companies that I've worked for have been over 100 years old. And I think that's important. The reason I bring it up is these companies, the reason why they've been around for so long, quite frankly, is they've invested in people. They've invested in leadership development, which I think is critical. And so, yeah, I've also been really global. I've worked in India and Mexico and Argentina and the US, worked in 40 countries. And I'm also proud to say that I've been a part of 3 organizations that have become the #1 ranked organization for training and development by the Association for Talent Development. So award-winning corporate universities. Now, about a year and a half ago, something really unexpected happened to me. I joined an organization that I thought was amazing. It had the purpose, the passion, and the profit all woven together. And I thought it'd be a place that I'd probably retire, quite frankly. And about a year and a half into that job, I was asked to leave. And I didn't see it coming. It was really shocking. And so that was unexpected. And I took some time to contemplate, what had happened, what I learned from it, and what I wanted to do next. And after some time of resting, recharging, and reflecting, I decided to start my own business. So I've been in business about a year now, and I focus on unlocking the potential of people and organizations. And specifically right now, I'm really helping folks with transitions in organizations, up in organizations, and out of organizations.
Brilliant. There's a lot there that we get to explore in the next 25 minutes. That's a great introduction. Thank you so much. And you've already led into the core theme of this podcast, and that is how we show up for ourselves and for others when things go as unexpected. It's easy to get along in life when things just sort of are what we expect. They're routine and planned and much more difficult to figure out how we show up for ourselves, which we have some control over, and then how we show up for others who we have significant influence on. And you and I talked about a few stories last time we chatted. I'd love for you to share with this audience, given this amazing global experience you have and sort of a stunning outcome about a year and a half ago. Can you share with our audience a few stories about how you've dealt with the unexpected, not just putting up your own shingle ultimately, but give us some sense of what that's all about for you?
Absolutely. So one of the questions I asked myself early on in my career was, how comfortable am I being uncomfortable? And like building that muscle to put myself into uncomfortable situations to really be creative, and to learn how to problem solve. And life, I think when we surrender to the flow, creates a lot of uncertainty, and through that uncertainty comes opportunity. So I'll start with a story about my career where I had a vision of moving to Colorado, and I was working in management consulting, and the firm that I worked with had an opening in Colorado Springs, and I figured out a way to get the job, and I moved to Colorado. I love the outdoors. I love like skiing and hiking and all the things. And about a year into settling into Colorado, I had bought a home, I had done all the things to settle in. My partner called me and he said, "Hey, I am leaving the organization. I'm moving to India, and I'd like you to come with me and help me build the school of leadership for an IT consulting firm. They are investing a huge amount of money, and would you join me?" And in that moment, it was like a full body yes. It was like, yes, I know that this is something that I want to do. Now,
you were in the flow. You were in the flow.
I was in the flow, but I also had to convince my body and my brain, to move forward with it. And the reason I made that choice was because of, quite frankly, the leader that I was working with. I trusted him. He believed in me more than I believed in myself. And so off we went to India, and we built this school of leadership. It was award-winning. And about 3 years into that experience, we got some news, and it was front page of the Wall Street Journal that our CEO had cooked the books. It was the Indian Enron is what they called it. The stock went from $30 to 30 cents, and it was a huge corporate scandal. It taught me a lot about ethics and values in business. And in India, they have a deity of Shiva. Shiva has many different personas, and one of them is Nataraj. And Nataraj is the creator and the destroyer in one being. And I thought that was really fitting for what had happened, because we created this amazing school of leadership. We were serving the business. It was accelerating and growing. And then all of a sudden, it was destroyed. And so what did we do in that moment? Well, we figured out how to care for the employees. We figured out how to solidify the business. We actually managed to help the company be acquired. And it was a huge learning experience and in detachment, and to kind of going with the flow of what happens, what you can control and what you can influence. And so I transitioned out of that company. I actually decided to go backpacking and clear my head and travel. And when I was backpacking, I had an opportunity actually through that process of just kind of detaching, as I said, and decompressing, to join a company in Mexico City. And so again, that transition and what ended in life created a new opportunity to go down to Mexico and work for HSBC, a big bank, and do amazing work there. And so the point of that is that one thing can lead to the other. And when we put ourselves in acceptance of the uncertainty, creation's possible. And so I'll just leave with that story, because I think it's a good one about seizing opportunities, but also realizing that through change and uncertainty can create even more.
Yeah, obviously the human species is set up to reduce risk, to reduce uncertainty. And here you are, I'm imagining at a relatively young professional age, already in that stage of accepting that there's only so much you have control of, and uncertainty leads to opportunity, which I love. I'd like to go back to one thing you did say, which was what allowed you to embrace the quite significant change from leaving Colorado Springs, where you had set as a destination, to then moving to India. And that is, you said, I had someone who believed in me more than I believed in myself. Mm. That is so powerful. And I think something that leaders miss oftentimes, people who are in leadership roles miss the importance of understanding that. If we could just go back to that part of your life, and then how it actually conveys into your work today, I'd love to just go into that a little further. Do you mind?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And so, when I think about leadership, I really try to flip it to look at fellowship, and why do people choose to follow, right? And so trust, as I mentioned, was a big thing. And so this belief in, hey, I can see things and you might not be able to see. I can stretch you and put you in positions where you get to shine. So part of it was the trust, right? And from him, but part of it was also this stretch. And I believe that when we're stretched and we're giving opportunities to perform, it just creates this confidence and this belief. And oftentimes we need leaders to, quite frankly, have that vision of what we can be and what is possible. And so through time, we built that trust. He was able to put me in situations where, quite frankly, they were unexpected, and I was able to perform. And it just, again, created this confidence. So those relationships where we can be vulnerable and we can actually be seen in ways that position us to, again, have this belief in ourselves is priceless. And I will say this too. I now do that for others. It's kind of like one of those things where like he did that for me, and it was such a gift. And now I give that gift to the people that I get to lead and then work with, quite frankly.
Yeah. I would call that a fairly high level of, cognitive emotional leadership aptitude. I, somewhat advanced in my own professional career, and I've been able to witness a number of different leadership styles. And I feel like it's maybe still not that common where someone thinks about how they stretch others in a thoughtful way. How they really say to them, to those they're managing or supervising, I'm going to put you in a challenging situation where you will fail at times, but ultimately this is about lifting you up to a higher plane of leadership. And I just wonder now in your work how that shows up. You're running your own consulting firm. You're working with teams in transition and succession. So how do you convey that to those that you work with today?
Absolutely. It's a really good question. And, readiness for change is super important, right? And we have to be ready for change to really move through it. And in my experience, oftentimes there needs to be a crucible moment, or there needs to be something that opens us up to a different way of being or showing up. And oftentimes those are actually opportunities that are hard. It's the failure that you talked about. It's the job change. Something new is opening up for you. And so my work in transitions, typically these people are ready for change because they've chosen to step into a new organization, step up in an organization, or oftentimes they're asked to leave an organization. And so that readiness is there, and that openness, and we all need help. We all need support. And so my role now is to say, you've got this opportunity to change. You're going through a major transition. How do we honor what has happened? Because I oftentimes think that we think about life as beginnings and endings, but actually I like to look at it differently. We have to end something before we can begin something else. And so I spend a lot of time helping people process and learn and reflect on what has happened, and then how they want to be in the future. So in my transitions work, I use a lot of my experience. I've transitioned, I think, in, up, or out of 45 different roles in my career.
Yeah.
So I understand that change process, and I feel like people are open and ready, and they need help, and they need someone to ride along with them. They're driving, but I'm helping them understand how fast, how slow, put on the brakes, accelerate, go left, go right. And so that feedback and that opportunity for coaching and mentoring and support is so priceless when we go through change.
Brilliant. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, Josh, but I transitioned sectors, jobs in a pretty profound way. About a little over 7 years ago, I was in higher ed for, all told, about 20 years, and made the decision to jump out into a small nonprofit that operates adjacent to higher ed. But we are a small nonprofit. We have to run like a business. We have revenue goals we have to meet. And to your point, I was thrilled to go into this environment. As much as I appreciate what higher ed brings to our society, I also knew that this was going to be a better fit. And how do I embrace all of the uncertainty, all the things I don't know? Because I didn't know most of the things I needed to know. It's a brilliant transition, and I encourage people to take what you're saying with heart, that we have to understand what we're leaving, but also what we're opening up to. Can you go further into, you've shared briefly in this podcast, the sort of transition that was quite abrupt for you, where you thought you might be at this organization for a really long time. And even given all of your professional successes and experiences, it didn't work out as you thought. Are you willing to explore that a little further with us?
Absolutely, absolutely. And so, you know, when we're caught off guard and when these things happen that we don't see coming, it can be, a shock, right? And so I like to use this kind of acronym of Sarah. So oftentimes it's shock, and then it's human nature to be angry. Then we move into reflection, and then we move into acceptance, right? And that process can take people quite some time, or some people move more rapidly through it. So I was definitely shocked at first, right? How could this happen? Kind of defensive. This isn't fair. Some anger, quite frankly, about how it happened. I didn't see it coming. And then I reflected and said, what a great opportunity for me to learn from this. I realize now, after taking that time to reflect and accept, that I moved too fast in the organization. I didn't pace myself appropriately. I didn't build the relationships with the right people at the right time. I didn't listen as much as I should have. There was a lot of other learnings that happened, but I needed to take that time to really reflect, right? And take the time to be curious about, this is happening for me, not to me, right? And so that was really important. And it catapulted me into where I am now. I'm more productive, I'm happier, and I feel like I'm more aligned to my values and my purpose than ever before. So what a great gift it was. Again, it didn't seem like that in the beginning. And so I think oftentimes in transitions, the natural reaction is just to move quickly into what's next and not take that time to reflect. In that reflection time, I rested, as I said, I recharged, I reflected. And there was a lot of fear, of like, what do I do next? I have 3 young kids, very healthy amount of expenses. Can I build my own business? And so taking that time to really dig in and decide and make a choice that I was going to go into uncertain territory has become so fruitful. I have a quick anecdote on this one. The day that I decided, I kind of took this Cortez approach to burning the ships and not going back, at least for 2 years. And the day I decided to do that, I got a phone call from an executive recruiter for a 7-figure job at one of the most iconic athletic brands in the world. And I kind of felt like it was the universe testing me. Are you committed? Are you willing to go into this uncertain area of your life? And I turned it down. I think we do get tested, to really be comfortable in the uncertainty. And from that comes creation, as I said before. So a little bit more about that process for me, for your question.
Awesome. Speaking of uncertainty and fear and the unknown, we have this world of artificial intelligence, which, I'm trying to keep up. I'm trying to understand the history. You talked about where we've been and what's coming ahead. And I don't have a technology background, but I feel like it's my responsibility to understand it a bit and, go all the way back to Turing. We've been talking about what can happen with machines and what can happen with technology. The Turing test is still an idea that's put out there. You are using AI in your work. Can you share with us sort of what are you seeing when you bring it up to people? Like, how are they mentally processing this? And how do you get them into this mindset that this is really a value add? It's necessary and a value add, and how you're going to help people actually be much more successful and productive in their work.
Absolutely. And so this is the biggest change to the way that we are and will be working since the internet. It is revolutionizing every aspect of work. And so with that, as you said, comes a fair amount of fear. And that's natural in change. And so I do think there are 2 things that I think about. One is the mindset, as you mentioned, and 2, the skill set. Okay, so the mindset is, this is happening for me, as I said before, and what a great opportunity to leverage technology to do things that level me up, to have more interactions and connections with people, to be more strategic, to be more creative. Every aspect of your work can be augmented or accelerated with AI, whether it's your design of your PowerPoint presentations, your budgets, your calendar, your writing. I mean, it's so vast, and there again is all this resistance. So the mindset of like, this is a great opportunity for me and my organization is really important. You know, you also talk, as we mentioned before, you know, curiosity. How can I use this? How can I leverage the AI to help me and the business grow? So there's mindset, and it's big. And then there's the skill set. So my call to action for all people that are working out there is get out of the stands and into the game. You know, start playing with the tools. If you're a leader of people, start to talk to your people about how to shift that mindset and skill set. Do not fear. A lot of times is because of the unknown, and so get in there and play with it and build your capabilities. Leaders moving forward are going to need to see AI as another worker, another person, or I was saying person, but you know, it's a persona that you can use and that you can collaborate with. And so we are working with organizations to figure out how to embed it and apply it and use it for the greater good. And, you know, there's a lot of implications, but I would just say in summary, it's building your capabilities. It's getting in there and encouraging others to do it as well.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. So there was a moment in time about 3 months ago, Josh, where I was like, can this AI revolution just wait about 10 more years? I'm 57, maybe retired 10 years. Can it just wait? And of course, no, it's not going to wait for me. And I was just kind of joshing myself. And so I started to listen to some podcasts and read some books and tinker a little bit. But you're right. I have this responsibility to at least get. I mean, I think I'm getting the mindset. I certainly don't have the skill set yet, but I really want to build that so that those that are so much quicker at this stuff, I can at least speak to them about it, right? It's relevant in our work, and it's certainly going to be relevant in the next 10 years, no doubt. This episode of As Unexpected is sponsored in part by Semester at Sea, a study abroad program for college students and adults on career breaks, sabbaticals, or retired, interested in learning and exploring the world together. Learn more about the Lifelong Learner program at www.semesteratc.org. So I'd like to transition us now. As you know, I have a bookshelf behind me, and every once in a while I pull a book off the shelf and I ask someone to respond to a quote. And today it's Patrick Lencioni, whose book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, is fairly well known in the management consulting world. I still think it's a foundational book in how do we think about teams. There's pieces that are missing, but overall, I think there's some real merit in it. And there's this quote later in the book. So I'd like to read it to you and get your response. Achieving vulnerability-based trust is difficult because in the course of career advancement and education, most successful people learn to be competitive with their peers and protective of their reputations. True or false, or both? And how would you how do you deal with vulnerability-based trust?
It's a juicy question, and I appreciate it. And I'm going to break it down into two parts. One, you know, why is this so hard? And then why is this so important? So first, it's so hard to be vulnerable and to create vulnerability-based trust because of our programming, you know, the cultures that we've been raised in, how we've seen things in the movies and in sports. And quite frankly, if people believe that when I'm vulnerable, I'm not in control, and when I'm not in control, unexpected things happen, then the defenses come up, right? I remember a book when I was coming up in the consulting world, it was like, never let people see you sweat. Always be buttoned up, right? Always be formal. And the reality is people that follow you want to know that you're human like them, want to know that you have the same fears and the same dreams, and they want to connect with you on a personal level, right? And so it's kind of counterintuitive to be vulnerable, but so powerful, just like embracing the unexpected is so powerful. And so a lot of the time that I spend with teams is really about breaking down trust. And it kind of has four elements. Credibility, it's kind of what got you the job. You're looking back. Reliability is doing what you say you're going to do, following through, walking the talk. Intimacy is the third factor. Into me you see. How well do I know you, what you're passionate about, inside and outside of work? Do I know you as a human being, not just a human doing? And then self-orientation, it's the me and the we. And I find with teams and individuals, it is the most challenging thing to be vulnerable and to be intimate with each other. So we spend a lot of time letting people tell their life stories. And what are the moments of truth, the moments that mattered, the moments that stung? And then people are blown away by really seeing each other and understanding each other because people have, opened up their minds and hearts to share who they are and their stories. And so we try to bypass trust oftentimes and level up to all the sexier parts of leadership development and all of that. And I want to talk a little bit of why this matters. So I talked a little bit about why it's so hard. Being vulnerable opens us up, but that openness creates such power if we're able to do it. So the case and why it matters, I just want to call out a couple quotes. So one is from Harvard Business Review. Every year, we spend around the world $60 billion on leadership development. That's what we invest. However, the return on that investment isn't very clear. Okay. The other stat that I'd like to throw out there is one from Gallup. They do an annual report of the state of the workforce. And a lack of disengagement at work costs us globally $8.8 trillion in lost productivity. So we're putting all this money into leadership development and it's not really working. We have a lot of actively disengaged people. And why is this? Quite frankly, I think it comes down to one of the cornerstones is a lack of trust and a lack of vulnerability-based trust. And so all the other things that we're trying to do and fix, you can't have that without the foundation of trust. So I went back to trust, maybe 15 years ago. It's where I start with every leader and every team.
Love it. Love it. And for those listening, Josh was talking about the trust equation, which just so happens, Josh, your timing is impeccable. We didn't plan this. I actually put that in front of my leadership team today. Now, we've referenced it in the past, but I wanted to bring it back and make sure we're all understanding it. And very much related to what you said, the most impactful part of that equation are the intimacy and self-orientation. It's embedded in that vulnerability that you're talking about, right? That if we can't share our stories, that is, that intimacy isn't there. If we're not other-oriented, that is, we're more self-oriented, that can wash away anything around credibility and reliability in a flash. So that, again, just as you said, is all tied into that vulnerability. Great timing. Thank you for building on my work with my team this morning. Love it.
Yeah, I have one more quick anecdote on this. And so it goes back to self-orientation and vulnerability. So when I went to Mexico City to work, I had decent Spanish. And the bank that I worked in, they had a mandatory, we will speak the language of English because they were all over the world. Globally at the director level. And so I come into the bank and I'm excited to get better at Spanish, but also excited to add value to the organization. And my peers did not necessarily embrace me. I was young. I happened to be white in that environment, which was another identity. And they were speaking Spanish and I did not understand what was going on. I could not track. It was very scary for me because I wasn't sure I was going to be able to be successful. So in that moment of fear, I had many choices. I was at a crossroads and I decided to get a tutor every night. Got up to speed, got fluent, and I earned the trust of my peers and of the people in the workforce because I was willing to be vulnerable. I was willing to be not self-oriented, but team-oriented. Yep. And get up to speed. And it was just such a gift. I look back on it now and say, wow, that was really hard. And it gave me a lot of gifts in return for that challenge. So that's uncertainty in action and the ability to be curious and have courage and actually also understand the environment I was stepping into and be compassionate for the others.
Beautiful. That's a great way to wind this up, last bit is, what is the most important thing that our listeners should know? That one piece of advice they should walk away with from this episode.
Whew,
I know that you have a lot to offer. We could go on for hours, but if you just want to leave us with the one thing, what would it be?
Yes, absolutely. Share your story. Be vulnerable and let people know who you are, where you come from, what matters, and it will accelerate your connection, your credibility, and your ability to work with others. Sharing your story is one of the greatest gifts you get to give to yourself and others, to be seen, to be heard, and to be valued.
That is just an outstanding finish. Share your story. Thanks so much, Josh. It's been a pleasure speaking with you today. I'm sure we'll connect soon. This episode of As Unexpected is sponsored in part by Semester at Sea, a study abroad program where students visit 10 countries on 3 continents, all while taking 3 to 4 college classes through Colorado State University. See course offerings and upcoming voyage itineraries at www.semesteratsea.org. Thank you for joining this week's episode of the As Unexpected podcast. The viewpoints and opinions of featured guests do not necessarily represent those of the Institute for Shipboard Education or Semester at Sea. Hit the like button, share it with your colleagues, family, and friends, and remember, be curious, be compassionate, be courageous. That's what it takes to lead as unexpected.